I would invite Dr. Dayna Lee-Baggley as well as Dr. Liam Martin to come back on. We are going to do a bit of a group Q&A. So I'm going to ask some pretty broad questions. And if you each want to take a turn in responding to that, that would be fantastic. The first one is really applicable. I mean, you know, hearing from the perspective of medicine and kinesiology, and then from psychology and occupational therapy, we all need to work together, and there's so much of an overlap in the messaging. How do we build a greater community of understanding and sharing when we have all this amazing new evidence out there that challenges what we've always thought about chronic pain? I know that might seem, wow, that was a big question, sorry.
How do we as like community? Different disciplines work together?
Working together and sharing the information, because we can be a bit siloed.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, I think this conference is a great example, not to be like, you're amazing, but yeah, I think any opportunity to come together in a multidisciplinary environment for me is wonderful. And social media is another great tool. I mean, I connect to doctors and other occupational therapists and psychologists on social media too. What about you, Dr. Martin?
One of the problems in our health, in our health system is that the government has no problem paying $20,000 a year for medication to treat a patient with rheumatoid arthritis. Mm-hmm. But if you try to get patients into any kind of a multidisciplinary program, it's like pulling teeth without an anesthetic. I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done around not the non-medical management of patients, and it's poorly done. Patient support is crap, and we depend on societies, we depend on interest groups to try and keep it going, and it drives me nuts. I mean, a lot of the things that you talked about in your talk, I've been doing for a long time, trying to encourage patients to take control. When you talk about, you know, your energy is only so much, you spread it out over a period of time. You don't take the day you feel great to try and do everything you didn't do on the 6 days you didn't feel great, and then you crash for the next 6 days. But it's, I mean, cognitive behavioral therapy is a really good way to help patients. But in order to get that, you have to have a trained psychologist or somebody who's trained in the area. But who pays for that? It's these simple, I don't say simple, but relatively inexpensive ways of managing things, and governments for some reason don't seem to get it. And it's not for lack of trying to get them to understand, but if something is going to go, the first thing we lose at clinic would be a physiotherapist, not access to medication.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll disagree with, I will agree with all of those things as well, that, you know, these are system level problems and we need to look at them as system level problems. And the way you deal with that is that you move from I to we. And when enough people get frustrated and find it unacceptable, that's when systems start changing. And that needs to include, you know, patients and people with lived experience, as well as healthcare providers, because we're all stuck in the system. Everybody, you know, you talk to physicians, they also don't want it to be that way, right? But those are system level problems.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch how governments are going to deal with the COVID long haulers. It reminds me of back in the late 80s, early 90s, when people were complaining of chronic fatigue. And the Epstein-Barr virus caused everything from World War I right through to the Cold War and everything else. But obviously that's been debunked. But it's just, there's a system level problem with this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that approach around having forums like this where different disciplines can communicate, and I'm sure there's a ton of new insights that people are gaining from this, but also that ground up approach of having patients being able to communicate with each other on social media. But we do need that top-down approach as well, where it is about getting into the governments and the ministries and getting them to recognize that there is a solution. And we often talk about, how much money gets shifted to medication, but it's also one of those that when people talk about money going to mental health and supporting individuals, it can be really challenging because it's a drop in the bucket. And it's really not necessarily even about the dollars, because they are potentially willing to spend the money. It's about the system itself and trying to make those changes. So from a more practical standpoint, I will hopefully ask each of you to share a life hack, either in your clinical practice or a life hack for patients. What's one life hack that you would want to share with either your colleagues or with your population?
Okay, so when I named Arthritis Life, life is an acronym actually for like life hacks, interviews, fun, and education. So life hacks are like my life. But the one I would say is that from the OT perspective is that, we look at every single activity of daily living, even the embarrassing ones like wiping. So I'll tell you, my most popular TikTok video that has 500,000 views is me just simply demonstrating something that's in like every skilled nursing facility, but patients like young patients with rheumatoid arthritis never get taught about this. Is just a long wiping aid. So you put the toilet paper in it. It's like a plastic stick, and then you can turn it around and it helps with shoulder pain and stuff like that. Or that would be like the gadget that allows you to still wipe in the traditional way, but the other one would be like a bidet is a workaround if wiping is hard. But I just really encourage any of the people with lived experience, no problem is too small in your daily life. I've told people, if you can't brush your child's hair, if you can't wipe your bottom, if you're having a hard time with sexual participation, those are all under the scope of occupational therapy, and you have a right, at least in the United States, if your health insurance covers it and you can't function in your daily life, you have a right to those services, whether or not your local rheumatology office has an OT. You can go out and find one. So anyway, okay, well, soapbox.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Can I ask, what do you mean by hack? Is it health assessment questionnaire? Is hack in my vernacular?
Just a simple tip or suggestion.
Well, I mean, the one that I use all the time for patients in regards to energy is how they manage their day-to-day activities. And I just mentioned it, that you don't do everything on the day you feel well and then you feel like crap for the rest of the week. You have to look at your week, write down everything you need to do, and then proportion it out to every day. And if you get through that, then you can increase a little bit by maybe 10%. But you always build in some time for yourself. If you don't build in time for yourself, it's a waste of time because you're still going to be on that treadmill trying to keep up. So it's important to have some time for yourself, to take some time away to exercise, because exercise, as Cheryl mentioned, not alone helps your mental approach, but it has been shown to reduce inflammation. And as people get older, we have inbuilt obsolescence into our muscles. If you lose muscle function and you have sore joints, your joints are going to be more painful because you have no impact deloading device around your joints, meaning your muscles. So that kind of thing, that's my advice to patients.
Amazing.
Yep. And I would say if there was one message for people to take away from my talk, it would be it takes a village to be well. Like the life hack is don't figure out the life hack yourself. They're like, people do this, like go find the other people who have already thought of this. There are disciplines when all they do is basically life hacks for illness and injury, like Cheryl here. So don't try to solve it yourself. Get a village, have a huge number of resources that you can ask and rely on. It's a cultural myth that the best humans are the ones that are independent, that can be on their own. And I'm like, the people who really are great at being on their own, that's like the Unabomber and psychopaths are really fantastic at being at their own. Not true. Being like the highest functioning humans are ones that are in a village, right? So build a village. You have to do it in an artificial way often, so that you're not trying to solve all these problems alone, because other people have them and other people have already solved them, and make use of that.
Well, I want to say thank you very much for being a part of our global village for the World Payment Summit this weekend. And we are actually going to be moving into our lunch break Before that, I want to say a huge thank you to all of our speakers for this rheumatology deep dive. And for all of you watching, please join us for a Spectrum presentation, which will be beginning shortly, and visit our exhibitor booths. Finish those digital passports. They need to be in by 2 p.m. Absolutely, we have these amazing prizes, everything from gift cards to books, as well as a bike. So enjoy your lunch break. We will be coming back at 12:25. Really excited for the afternoon. And of course, our keynote speaker later this afternoon, focusing on self-compassion, which we've had already discussions around this morning, is Kristen Neff. Join Spectrum, have a break yourself, take some time for wellness, and see you at 12:25.